Well, let's start with the first part of your question with regard to the effects on the NATO summit. I do not think there will be a very big effect. Of course, there may be a question: will President Trump still come to The Hague, or will the Vice President come? But for the NATO agenda and the result, that will not make a difference. NATO has prepared this summit for quite some time, and there is already agreement on the main outcomes of this summit. This is also the way how diplomacy works, and of course, at the very core of this summit is the pledge to raise the percentage of to raise the defense budget to the 5%, the 3.5 plus 1.5% level, and that already had to be made sure before the NATO summit. So against that backdrop, that is the most important result of this meeting, and nations have already said that they will agree to this. So from that backdrop, the main result of the summit is there and will be there. And of course, after the summit, the implementation of a lot of stuff will continue. But the summit as is, I don't think will be much affected. Of course, what I cannot see, I'm not part of a national delegation or a politician, because there will be a lot of conversations ongoing, because it's all these people that are now brought together in The Hague, and they have the evenings and they have dinners and they talk to each other. So there will be a lot of informal chatting, so to speak. And with regards to the Netherlands' position vis-à-vis Iran and the United States, this is really about going back to the negotiating table. But I think the Netherlands government is also very much aware it has no big or strong position whatsoever. But there is, of course, a grave concern, like in other nations, that it will go out of hand. So we all hope here in the Netherlands that fighting will soon stop and diplomacy will take over again. So that's more or less the Dutch position. But of course, I'm here at Klingendaal and I cannot speak on behalf of the government. And like I said, with regard to the summit, no doubt there will be conversations, but it's not directly connected to the summit and the outcome of the summit.
Do you think, is there any conflict of interest between increasing the defense budget for NATO allies while there is another ongoing discussions about new European security architecture?
I always try to be a bit reluctant giving straight yes or no answers, and I've been a civil servant for too long, I guess, to say straightforward yes or no. But in this case, I can really say this is about no, because at the end of the day, it's nations that have to take care of their military and have to invest, and so these are national capabilities. And you can deploy them in a NATO context, and you can deploy them in an EU context. So the main responsibility is for nations to improve their capabilities. And then the second question is, do we do this in a NATO context if you deploy them? Do we do this in an EU context? And of course also with regard to the defense the production action plan from NATO, or the EU initiatives to improve production. Nations can use all these instruments to improve their act, so to speak. But at the end of the day, it is really up to nations to make a decision on how much do they spend and where. And then, of course, there is a lot of political pressure. This is also what this NATO summit is about. There is a strong pressure, firstly from the US, but now also all nations have agreed to improve, to spend more. So there is a lot of political pressure to do this. But at the end of the day, it's the nations that make the decisions, and it can be done either through EU or NATO and using NATO and EU instruments. So I see it as a complementary thing, at least from the perspective of capability building. difficult. I think it's a reality. Firstly, you are mentioning Lithuania, your home country. You are very, very close to Ukraine. You're very, very close to Russia. So you are, as a small nation, you are doing the very, very best you can, and even more than that. That's the way I see it. On the other hand, Spain is not that much spending on defense. I think 1.1% of their GDP. So they will increase a lot. So they will have to do a lot in the coming years. They will do a lot. But apparently it was difficult for the Spanish Prime Minister and his coalition government now to put that too hard into writing. So some words have changed in the declaration, but it's not like Spain says, well, we're off the hook. There is an uncertainty about how far they will get. But I don't see it as too much of a problem, or would it be a specific concern that Spain has now sent a letter, well, we're not sure if we will go up to the 5%, but I think there will be a lot of pressure from within and also from outside on Spain to do more with regard to capability building, and I'm quite sure they will. So where it will end, we'll see, but I'm not too concerned.
And as far as we know, in the declaration, the main reason for 5% spending will be the threat of Russia. What kind of message the summit will send to Russia?
Well, in practice, yes, it will be mainly about Russia, if you talk about threats, but of course there are many more threats. For instance, also if you talk about cybersecurity. So against that backdrop, for me, NATO is not a one-trick pony, so to speak. It's also about helping each other out against whatever threat. I can recall 20 years ago going to Afghanistan. So then we had a very different kind of threat. So threats can evolve and change. So that being said, of course, the main concern now is Russia, and a very conventional threat in the sense the kind of war we now see in developing in Ukraine. So that means actually a lot about capabilities, about defense planning. How are we going to develop our armed forces? How can we collaborate? But at the end of the day, NATO is about collective defense against whatever threat. And right now, I think Russia is very much on the forefront, obviously. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.